everybody. I want to welcome you all, and especially coming out here in a little bit of inclement weather. Thanks to you all for coming out. I'm Pauline Mendola. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Epidemiology and Environmental Health in the School of Public Health and Health Professions. I hear an echo. Do you hear an echo?
It's gone now.
It's gone now? Okay, great. I want to start out with a land acknowledgement statement. We want to begin by acknowledging the land on which the University of Buffalo operates, which is the territory of the Seneca Nation, a member of the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is a pledge to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. It's also covered by the 1794 Treaty of Canandaigua between the United States government and the Six Nations Confederacy, which further affirmed the Haudenosaunee land rights and sovereignty in the state of New York. Today, this region is still the home of the Haudenosaunee people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and share ideas in this territory. So, Yahweh. I'm really very pleased to welcome you to the 15th Saxon Graham Lecture. It's so wonderful to have this event in person. This is the first time we've been in person since 2019 when we celebrate our 100th anniversary of the department. The lecture and the award ceremony commemorates Dr. Saxon Graham and his contributions to the department and to the field of epidemiology more generally. Dr. Saxon Graham was a longtime UB professor and chair of our department from 1981 to 1991. He was an internationally recognized cancer epidemiologist, most well known for his groundbreaking studies on diet and cancer. Beginning in the 1950s, when the prevailing wisdom was that it wasn't possible to study diet using epidemiology. So at that time, most of the work was done in animal models instead of in real populations. The impact of Dr. Graham's example of research excellence persists in his continuing example to all of us and in this annual lecture. When putting the plan for this lectureship together, Saxon really considered the impact that he had on the students and his mentees, the people he worked with, to be one of the most important parts of his legacy. In recognition of that legacy, we have 2 graduate student awards that have been funded by generous gifts in his name from alumni, faculty, and friends. So I'll give a little background on each of the awards, and then I'm going to invite Dr. Lena Mu to introduce this year's winners and talk a little bit about their work. First, our highest distinction is the Saxon Graham Dissertation Award for overall academic excellence. And this award goes to a recent graduate of the Epidemiology PhD program. It's a recognition of excellence in all aspects of the program, including the quality of their research. The student must also have had active engagement in data collection, which is something that we value. The second award is the Saxon Graham Research Award. The Saxon Graham Research Award is really a wonderful resource in that it provides funds for doctoral students to support their dissertation efforts. And this award was initiated by Dr. Graham, his son, Saxon Graham Jr., who's here with us today, and also Dr. Jim Marshall. So now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lena Mu to announce this year's winners. But first, I want to acknowledge Lena's amazing mentorship. This is the second year in a row that Lena was the primary mentor for the Saxon Graham Dissertation Award for overall academic excellence winner. So let's give her a round of applause for her expert guidance of our PhD students.
Thank you so much, Pauline, for your nice word. If I know anything about mentorship, I have to say I learned from Dr. Zhang here, who is our guest speaker, also my advisor. Okay, good morning, everyone. First, I really want to thank you, two of our award review committee members, for your excellent work. Thank you so much for choosing the best student for us. It is my great honor to announce the winner of this year's Saxon Grant Dissertation Award for overall academic excellence. The award goes to Dr. Zhongzheng Jason Niu. Jason joined our PhD program in 2017, and he worked with my team since then. His dissertation focused on the interrelationship among air pollution, telomere length, and cardiovascular disease with a life course perspective. And the dissertation committee, including myself, Dr. Xiaozhong Wen, Meng Wang, and Lili Tian. Jason has really done a substantial primary data collection work through 3 different research studies, including one of his dissertation projects. And his effort involves developing questionnaire, design online platform, recruiting and interviewing participants, administering intervention, and collecting, processing, and analyzing biospecimens. Jason has published over 30 peer-reviewed journal articles, and among which many are on the top-tier journals in our field. He has received many awards, including the nationally highly prestigious pre-doctoral fellowship from the American Heart Association. Jason now is a postdoc fellow in University of Southern California. He has received the NIHS Research Excellence Center Pilot Fund as a PI of the project. Jason is really one of the most motivated and engaged students I've ever mentored. And I really want to see he's also the best team member one can ever have. And we're really extremely proud of Jason and his accomplishment. Thank you. And I'll have Jason to speak a few words. He's on the Zoom.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Mu. It's a huge honor for me to receive this award. I'm deeply honored by the Education Committee for the recognition of my work. This award in the name of Dr. Saxon Graham means a lot to me. I will take such great honor with all my future journey and being a proud member of the EEH alumni. I'd like to take this opportunity to give my sincere and heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to Dr. Mu, the chair of my dissertation committee. You have provided me all the support and the guidance that I could ask to succeed in my PhD program. You have been a great mentor since day one, and I feel you have a talent that you can motivate your students and while providing us the scientific tools to help us achieve our goals. Thank you so much, Dr. Mu. I'm also very grateful to my whole dissertation committee, including Dr. Xiaozhong Wen, Dr. Meng Wang, and Dr. Lili Tian. I'm privileged to have you all for your tremendous support and patient guidance. In a larger sense, I would love to thank all the EEH faculty and staff for your wonderful teaching and dedicated nurturing for us students. You all together have created such an amazing environment that made me feel supportive and as warm as a family. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Jason. And here's Jason's certificate, and we'll mail to him along with the cash prize. Thank you. So next, it's my great pleasure to recognize this year's recipient of Saxon Graham Research Award, Sarah Kanunas. Sarah is our outstanding third-year PhD student, and he's working with Dr. Tia Blamo, Pauline Mandola, Ling Shao, and Lili Tian on her PhD dissertation. For the awarded research project, she proposed to explore to what extent do the temperature extremes impact the risk of low birth weight in rural Ghana, and if the government social protection program mitigate this risk. Her mentor, Dr. Tia Blamo, cannot be here today, She asked me to say a few words about Sarah. Sarah has impressed her mentors with her thoughtfulness, first read analytical quantitative analysis skill, efficiency, and passion for research in social and environmental determinants of the health. And Sarah has published 5 peer-reviewed journal articles and has also co-authored the report and the research brief commissioned by UNICEF. Last year, he was appointed to the 2021-2022 cohort of Maternal Child Health Student Fellow at the American Public Health Association. We are very proud of you, Sarah, and your accomplishment. We certainly expect to hear more about your continued success as you move on in the program and your career. Would you please come up, Sarah, and warm to Pauline?
Thank you so much. Can you get a picture? Oh, yeah. Where? Oh, here. Yeah.
Thank you all. With that, I will turn the podium to Pauline.
Find the place where it says back to Pauline. So now it's really my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Zuo-Feng Zhang. He's our Saxon Graham Lecturer for 2022. Dr. Zhang is a distinguished professor and he's chair of the Epidemiology Department in the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health. He also serves as co-director of the Center for Environmental Genomics, director of the Molecular Epidemiology Training Program, and the scientific director of the UCLA Central Tumor Registry. He has a lot of jobs. He received his medical degree in preventive medicine from Shanghai Medical University in 1983, and he studied cancer epidemiology in the graduate program of the Shanghai Medical University from 1983 to 1987. He also did postdoctoral training at the International Agency for Research on Cancer, called IARC, in Lyon, France, from 1987 to 1988. And this is the part where we get to brag, because Dr. Zhang is one of our department's most distinguished alumni. He worked with Saxon Graham on his dissertation and got his PhD in cancer epidemiology here at UB in 1991. Dr. Zhang's research focuses on the molecular epidemiology of cancers of the bladder, prostate, esophagus, stomach, head and neck, and cervix. He is well known for his work on nutrition and cancer, the epidemiology of second primary cancers, methodologic issues in the use of tumor markers in cancer epidemiology, as well as factors associated with the progression and survival of cancer. I have to say, on a personal note, I was a student in the department at the same time as Zuo-Feng, and so we've known each other for many years. And it was my great pleasure to invite him to speak to us today in honor of Dr. Graham. His talk today is very timely, integrating pandemic infection and non-communicable disease. So with that, I am very, very proud to introduce Dr. Zhang, who is an amazing leader and scholar in cancer epidemiology and a bright star amongst our distinguished alumni. He'll speak to us today on the challenges and opportunity presented by the COVID-19 pandemic on non-communicable disease epidemiology. Please give a warm welcome to our 2022 Saxon Graham Lecturer, Dr. Zuo-Feng Zhang.
Thank you very much for Pauline for your such a nice introduction, and I'm so happy to come back to Buffalo. This yesterday was my first travel since pandemic in 2.5 years, and the first place I visit is my hometown. Here I call it my hometown. Why? Because I come from here. So I'd like to share with you. So I just before my, in the morning I discussed with Mr. Saxon Graham Jr. When I see him, I had tears. Why I had tears? He looks exactly like Dr. Graham. Do you believe me? You can see the picture. So, while we're waiting for technology, I'd like to talk about Dr. Graham. So I was, when I ended my postdoc fellowship at International Agency for Research on Cancer, so I came to United States because my wife, who was accepted as a master's student at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I had to be with my wife, right? So I came here, and my supervisor at that time, Dr. Max Parky, he is a friend. He was a friend of Dr. Graham, and he called Dr. Graham. Say, I have a postdoc who is going to be in the Rochester, and Dr. Graham says, please let him to visit me. So after, I think in the first week, when I arrived in the United States, I visited, my wife and me, we visited Dr. Graham. We went to his home. We talked about my future plans. And at that time, he suggested me to be a postdoc, to working on his research projects. So I said, Dr. Graham, I'd like to be in the PhD level, a PhD program. He told me his PhD being paid like a slave, and it's not much, like $7,000. I said, I still want to do it. So I did it. So I eventually applied. I get into the program. I remember getting to the program in 1989, beginning of 1989, and started my PhD program. In the first day, when I meet with, the first time when I meet with him in his office, I met with him in his home, but then I meet with him in his office. I gave him my academic plan. So I have a table for everything. I said, here is each semester, what courses I want to finish and what kind of project I'm going to do. The plan was for 2 years and finish a PhD program. And he looked over and looked over, looked over again. Then he looked at me and said, this plan is very, very ambitious, but you can do it. So with his encouragement, sorry, I couldn't be. So with his encouragement, I started the student. In fact, when I was PhD student, on average, 5 hours of sleep. I don't sleep much. And every day I have the exams. And I don't remember how many courses I was taking. And as you see, it was 19-unit limit. I enrolled in 19 units, but take additional 2 courses and without the credit. But go to the end, at my end of my 2 years, I finished my dissertation, but because there was a war, so I couldn't get the job. So delayed for 6 months. So that's my journey here. So this is Dr. Graham on the top. You see, it looked exactly like Saxon Graham Jr. That's why when I see him, I always have tears. And so this is me, a young man, looks very naive, right? So I was here, and this picture was taken in 1991, when Dr. Graham retired from his position, and I graduated from this program. So he was my advisor. So we did it together, right? He retired and I graduated. But after 31 years, I become the chair. I'm 69 years old, almost like his age. I'm thinking about retirement, but I might keep going on. So who knows, right? So this is a very short story. So we have a lot of people here you probably don't know, and a lot of them already become the chairs, becomes the leaders in the field. So you probably from this is a very important picture, and I would hope you I think the department just sent me this picture. I was so glad to have this picture again to see, to go back to the memory about this very, very good department. So talk about Dr. Graham's mentorship. So basically, he and me, he called me to his office on daily basis. He was a chairman, very, very busy. He was a PI of a huge study in Buffalo, and he has so many. But he always called me to his office, not discussing. We were not discussed about my research project, but he trying to correct my English because I don't speak English when I'm here. So that's the problem. Every day he gave me his teaching to me. Is trying to correct my English. I still remember, I was hurt. He says, if you couldn't speak English, that's a disability. I was hurt. But from that day, I started to think, my English is still not that good, but I had to approach it, but I tried my best. And so that's the story when I'm here. And, and his training is very, very unique. So you talk to him, they give you very specific advice, sometimes give you directly, then you go on. And I think I was so happy to have Dr. Graham as my research advisor and as a chair, and I enjoyed everything here at SUNY Buffalo. I still remember, this morning I talked with a few PhD students and master's students. And I told them why I'm feeling good in SUNY Buffalo, because everybody is trying to take care of me. This is amazing. It's a difference. And I remember in my first semester, and since I couldn't speak English, right, and I couldn't participate in the class discussions, and got to the time of the midterm exam, a lot of my students come to me, probably Pauline did too, and said, Dr. Zhang, we need help. We're trying to help you. Because a few students noticed I really have difficulties in the listening and understand, and I couldn't speak. But what I did, I said, I don't need much help because my English training was in writing and in reading. So I go to the library, I got all books related to the topic, I read all of them. So after exam, I become the #1 on the class. People say, this guy was cheating. I didn't cheat. I worked hard. So I just want to let you know, I did my best here. So you might want to, yesterday we had dinner with Pauline, with Joe together, with Lena. We talked about, why you're giving this topic. The topic is about COVID-19 and the chronic disease. Why not cancer, right? I think that is kind of, to us, the COVID-19 is an opportunity, right? There are not many epidemiologists has experience of this COVID-19 pandemic in your lifetime, right? When you have this pandemic, better to jump in, to swimming in it, and to trying to do some research, trying to make contributions as an epidemiologist. So that's why when this pandemic started, I was, this started in China, in Wuhan. And they, in February 21st, the government locked down the whole big city with like 20 million people there. It's a big city, huge city, right? Lockdown, totally lockdown, everything stopped. And by that time, I was, I was kind of paid a lot of attention. I actually write a lot of comments, suggestions, interviews. I try to convince the leadership. The lockdown is not the best way to stop this pandemic, stop this epidemic. That time is not pandemic yet. But you have to make sure you get into the community to looking for those cases and to identify all of them, if possible, to isolate them. Why I say that? Because if you have the patient who are not diagnosed in the community, they keep transmitting to others, then the community infection will be going on no matter what you do, right? So government listened to. So I gave them detailed suggestions and steps. They did, after a week, they did that. They did that in 3 days. They did a whole community survey, identify all of the potential cases and infections, and they did isolation, quarantine of those people. And I tried to make some suggestions, but after 2 years, so today is April 1st, right? Unbelievable. It's about 4 days ago, the Chinese government decided to lock down a huge city, which is Shanghai. How many cases they have? Reported daily cases they have is 69, the day when they announced the lockdown. And there's this kind of action, you could not justify this lockdown. So I immediately, after this announced, I immediately write a long suggestions to the leadership. I have a channel to go through the leadership. Also, I also published my suggestions, columns, because what they do, they still use the way I suggest them to do 2 years ago. One is to identify all cases, to get everybody isolated in order to control for this pandemic. But today, the story will change, right? At the beginning, we don't know what this disease is, right? We have no treatment. We have no vaccine, right? We know nothing about this disease. But today, we know almost everything, right? We know there's a continuously change mutations of virus. We knew this Omicron is much less dangerous because Omicron BA1 and BA2, they only affect your upper respiratory tract. They don't go to your lung. If they don't affect your lung, people don't die, right? It's not a pneumonia anymore. It's just like a cold, just like a flu, right? And they still use the same way. Like earlier time, I suggested to them in Wuhan to do detections for such a large city, to have detection and to control, to isolate people, to send people to like a very big place. Everybody has a one bed, so it's kind of like concentration camp. And this is not acceptable. I gave them suggestions. I said, at this point, we know a lot. And also Chinese vaccination level is over 80%, right? And Chinese government has decided, one company has kind of imported the Pfizer to China. The Chinese government did not approve. And the Pfizer's oral medication for the treatment also be imported. So we have a vaccine, we have treatments. We understand this disease not affecting your lung, right? Why we should still do all the thing again. This is not the way to control for pandemic. Because epidemiologists, the strategy for prevention, keep changing, right? So this morning, including this morning, I'm still trying to discuss with the people who actually have who are in charge. We have a big disagreement and they still want to do this. I told them, go to the end. You still have to do whatever I suggest you to do. Because, you don't have sufficient space for the large group of people isolation. You don't have a big space for the people who are close contacts, right? I suggest them for close contacts and for those people without symptoms, they should stay at home. They disagree. They want to move them to a place. And if they move them to a place that creates the potential cross infection and may getting things worse, right? But anyway, I'm doing my share, but they don't want to change. So let's keep looking at this news story about Shanghai. You can look at newspapers, look at Shanghai lockdown, and I think it's going to continue. But my prediction is it is very difficult to have. They call it zero policy. The zero policy started from me in the earlier time, but not right now, right? They're still doing that. So anyway, it's a disappointment. I hope they can change. I don't know if they can change. I don't see them changing next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, but eventually they're going to change. So let's talk about the pandemic. A pandemic is almost over now, right? Why? Because we, if you hear the news that in the United States, it was predicted, which was estimated that almost 90% of the population has antibodies, right? The antibodies are either from vaccination or from infection, right? So if you have 90% of the people with antibodies, in epidemiology term, we call herd immunity, right? So the disease, no matter how strong they are, they could not transmit because they have a kind of wall around in the population. Okay, if you have over 90%, really, this is the end of the pandemic. But anyways, I still want to go over the data we have. So this is the data about the patient being diagnosed and the deaths in the whole world. We can see it's kind of over 460 million people have a diagnosis and 6 million people died. And in the United States, we're going to approach like in the United States, we're going to approach the 1 million people, the deaths of 1 million people very soon. And the United States, the case we're going to, right now it's over 81 million cases. And so here is a rank, the United States, then India, Brazil, France, and UK in terms of case numbers. So those are top 5 countries in the whole world. And if you look at case fatality, this is a case fatality, which is when you get disease, what proportion of people die, right? So in the whole world, the 1.32, US 1.22, and India is 1.2. That means 100 people being diagnosed, 1.2 people die. So that's the average, right? So you can look at this, but some countries already get to a certain lower level, like France and the UK. So this is the basic data here, and so what happens right now? People get kind of scared. They say, in the whole world, 6.1 million people died because of COVID-19. But if you look at the data back, 50 million people died of Spanish flu, right? And 80 million people died in the Second World War, right? So why the COVID-19 What should I do? Why COVID-19 has relatively low numbers of deaths? Why? Because of technology, because of vaccination, because of treatment, right? So otherwise, if we just like earlier times when the Spanish flu occurs, people have to die, right? But right now, people don't have to die, right? So that's what happened. We don't need to worry much. Yes, people die. Everybody died in the family. That's your real 100% loss, right? But you don't get scared, right? I think trying to face it. This is a pandemic. With a pandemic, people they die. And so if you look at the case fatality is 1.3 compared with the Mars is 30%. That's low. 30% means 10 people get disease, 30 of them, 100 people get disease, 30 of them are die. So that's a very fatal, right? But not the COVID-19. And so this is a number. Here, I want you to pay attention to the total numbers. 400 million people recovered from in the whole world because they had COVID-19, they recovered. And this is some the population we're going to pay attention later. This is very much the same data, and but I put more countries here. Those are number 6 to number 10. So China is not on this list because they have a very small numbers. The zero policy in the last few years was successful, which made the COVID-19 almost disappear. They don't have people die. People don't die from COVID-19. People actually very few cases, and so that is successful. We have to admit, right? But until today, this is a golden opportunity to kind of exit to this pandemic. It's a very good opportunity, but they refuse to do that. And in the future, it's going to have an impact not only for the Chinese, but also has an impact for the whole world. And I can mention that later. So this is the vaccination, the proportion of vaccination among those top 10 countries. So you can see that the span, this solid portion are proportion of people who has a completed vaccination. For example, the Pfizer, they have 2 shots, right? And this data did not include in the boosters. Right now, people start talking about the 4th boosters among people over 50 years old, right? So here are you can see the vaccination among 10 countries, but unfortunately, the United States is quite low, 66% of people who completed the two vaccines. This is a very, very low compared with other countries, European countries and other countries. This is a kind of disappointment. And then you look at Germany is 75 if you look at completed vaccines. So we are a little bit higher than India, Turkey, and Russia. We have a very strong, opposition on the vaccine, right? Because the government should not let us to ask us to force us to be vaccinated. That's true. I have the same opinion. But at the individual level, vaccines really save lives. Okay? If the time when I had my vaccine caused my problem, caused my heart. And I had heart problem after vaccine, but I still completed my vaccine. Why? The small problem is small than the death, right? So when you have a true choice of the death and survive, if there is something which can save you, that's something you have to take, right? So yes, I think so. So this is what happened. Then you can see why United States, other countries, when they have a complete vaccine, their what we call the case fatality are much lower, but United States still keeping a relatively high level. So that's what happened in the U.S. So you can look about the case fatalities. So you see, U.S. is among the countries with Brazil, Russia. This is the U.S., India. So those are with relatively lower vaccine rate, right? But other countries really close to or lower than 1. So people may ask, so how low it would be? So if the case fatalities is close to 0.005, which is very much similar to a flu. So right now, it's still higher than flu, 10 times higher than flu, still has an issue, right? But when we kind of with more treatment, with more vaccination, this is going to reduce. And the COVID-19 is going to become a flu, kind of big flu. And every year, everybody gets vaccination, and that's it. This is my prediction, but but people need to be vaccinated. Otherwise, it's going to be with us. I don't know, it's forever or what. It's definitely not the SARS. And when SARS started, and it's only stay with us for a year, then totally disappeared. And I don't know why totally disappeared. And people actually say this is probably generated from lab. And why? We don't know, right? So that's the issue. And COVID-19, the same thing. COVID-19, this virus is very, very difficult to deal with. And this virus is cause the disease, COVID-19, is unpredictable because sometimes we see the seasonal changes, we see the whatever, you don't see that. It's unpredictable. So this is also a strange virus. We have to deal with. So here comes with my thinking. So as epidemiologists, sometimes we try to think about something to create some new ways to evaluate, control. How can we have a good control of the disease, right? Here with the COVID-19, I start to thinking about at which level the disease can be ended or to be terminated, right? So I looked at this 5 countries, right? And this is the overall case fatality in the world is 1.26. United States is average. India is very much close to United States. Brazil is high, and France and UK are lower than us, right? So, and here is the incidence rate. The incidence rate, usually people use the incidence rate by million, right? I put it as a percentage, but easy to see. In the whole world, it's about 6% of people in the population getting this disease. In the United States, we only have 25%, almost 25% people getting this disease. Among 4 people, 1 must have a disease. People say, if you did not hear anyone around you has a COVID-19, you must have no friend, right? Right? So some of your friends may have, we already have this disease. And so India is about 60%, Brazil is 75%, the incidence rate, India is 3%, Brazil is 13%, France is very high. Why they're very high? Because this Omicron. Omicron is causing a lot of cases. And the UK is also quite high, so 28%. So here comes I was thinking about, CDC was doing the prediction, to see population, the antibody levels. But I just use a very simple assumption. So what I assuming is that first the completed vaccination, the percentage should be counted as a part of your herd immunity, right? But those people who have a disease, I assume half of them could be counted towards to this level. Why I say half of them? Because another half may also, have already had vaccination, or after they had disease, they had vaccination. So assumption is that 50% of them never had vaccination, right? So add them together. If over 80%, I think this 8% artificial. It's not really artificial. We had a paper under review. We found 80% of the herd immunity can really protect you from the disease and from the death, and may cause the termination of the pandemic. So 80%. If it's over 80%, you are going to be in a better situation. The case fatality will be going to drop down. So this is my assumption. So I have an estimated herd immunity here in the whole world is about 60%. So not the time to end the pandemic yet. Okay. In the United States, it's close to 8%, 78%. India is 61%. But we do have several countries who are over 8%. Brazil is over 8%, France 95%, and UK 86%. And you can look at the case fatality. This is the current, the recent case fatality. That means right now, how many people been diagnosed and how many people are dying. But in the whole world, it's 0.27. United States, way high, 2.3, very high, right? And India, high, the 1.9. But you look at those countries, over 8%, they're very low. Like France is 0.13. You've dropped a little bit more. This, in fact, is a flu, right? And UK is also quite low. So that's why a lot of European countries just opened up. So no vaccination cards, no checking on anything, no isolation, just open the society up. So myself, I support the open the society, right? So we don't have to be scared of this pandemic, right? But in the United States, some portion of the United States has to increase your vaccination. But if we're not increase the vaccination among people who are unvaccinated, will have the disease. This part also will be counted. If they get disease, then you also get your antibodies. So right now the thinking is this virus are going to be with us, right? But they are going to be here forever, right? And so the situation is, how can we transmit transfer this from the pandemic to the endemic, right? And so this is very important at this point, and may have some opportunities for epidemiologists, and may have some challenges, right? So this is a pandemic. This is usually we say epidemic, right? You have an outbreak here, outbreak there, right? But pandemic means everywhere it happens. But right now, what we need to do is from the pandemic to be transformed to endemic, and which means at a very, very low level, relatively low level. But the disease is here. Level is not high. The fatality is not high. And then they're not actually just like tuberculosis, just like some other diseases. They're going to be with us, but it's not too much, right? So I did an estimate and looked at the data with CDC's data in the last few years about flu. So on the average, the level in the United States on average is every day, if you have less than 1,000 people die of the flu, that's a flu. Usually on the average is 1,000 cases per day, right? 1,000 deaths per day. And I think if COVID-19 becomes endemic, I think much lower than this level. So I think we have a very tough job to do, because right now we still have 2,000 people, 1,500 people die, right, per day. And we have over 30,000 cases per day, right? So we have to drop this down, have to make it lower than in order to transfer from this pandemic to the endemic. That's my hope. I think we're getting there. In fact, 30% people who do not want to be vaccinated, eventually they're going to get infected. And they can be counted also to this herd immunity. They can be protected. And the good news right now is the BA2 becomes a dominant type in the United States. And especially in the northern and east area, you see a slight increase of the COVID-19 cases. And people start to get panic. Is that it's going to cause a new increase? We happened in the United States from December to February. You see a big increase, right? Whether or not the BA2, the Omicron can cause the same thing. I'm very confident with that, because people actually looked at, the people with Omicron 1 has antibodies, which actually very few cases being identified to get the infection of Omicron BA2. So that means the antibodies generated can be resistant to this new infection. So most likely it's not going to be a big increase again on this Omicron BA2. So what are the basic conditions of this change? So can you see from the pandemic to endemic? So what's the condition? The major condition is high proportion of the people getting immunoprotections. Protections either from vaccination or from infection, right? So by doing that, then you have much less transmission, because you are protected, right? If we have 10 people in this classroom, if there's one case, right, or we have 100 people here, but 90 people with high level of antibodies, those 10 people really hard to transmit to others, right? So they can only transmit among people who are not vaccinated. So the less transmission becomes much less, and also the hospitalization and death will be much less. That is a low level, safe level. So this is my estimate. So right now, we have the daily mortality is 1,150 days per day, and annual number of COVID-19 deaths is 421,000. So this is what happened. But if we can have, sorry, I just my last one. We thought if we can keep this 99 deaths per day, we reach to the level of the endemic. That's my estimation, because this number is going to be very close to the flu. This is 99, 100 deaths per day. Is very much get to this number, which is close to the influenza. then talk about our own research. Because not only I changed my research topic, I also convinced some of my PhD students to be on this topic. So one of my PhD students who actually had a dissertation proposal being passed on the air pollution and lung cancer and genetic factors, the interaction. But when this started, I said, can you change your dissertation topic to COVID-19? So she did. So here is the result. This result was published. Which if first paper in published, we found that PM 2.5 is a risk factor for COVID-19. So hypothesis was, this COVID-19 at earlier time is a pneumonia that causes lung problems, right? And must be related to something, smoking, air pollution, and those type of things, right? Then also earlier time during the SARS pandemic, it's not pandemic, only like in 6 countries. So I did a paper on the smoking and with Lina, we actually published a paper on the air pollution and SARS fatality. We found a very strong correlation. The smoking affects your lung, right? And could lead to death. So what we found was the PM 2.5 is a risk factor for COVID-19. That's what we found. At the same time, we found face mask and the stay-home policy is protective of the disease. So this paper already being published. And then the second project she did was on vaccination. So vaccination, what she found was the vaccine in earlier time. So this is the Delta, this is the period before Delta, and all protected, right? So you see, this is Delta period, this is before. They're protected overall. So this is at the population level, the U.S. population level, and also for the mortality is also protected. You can see for the Delta is also protected. Before Delta also protected. Overall, it's also protected. So right now the Omicron. So I said, don't continue to do your study. If the pandemic is not ending, we have to continue to do that. So we actually studied Omicron. So this is a new area. What we found is Omicron, the vaccination doesn't protect the instance, because that's what we know. So many people being diagnosed when they are vaccinated, right? In the CDC term called the breakthrough infection, right? Breakthrough infection is so many. We have so many, right? But the vaccine is protective of the death. So that's something quite interesting. You can see that the vaccine rarely can reduce the death. And also by working with Lina more, we actually published some papers. Lina is the leading researcher on the mental health issues among COVID-19, and not only doing studies on adults, but also doing studies among high schoolers. So so things are going on. I think Lina is also a cancer epidemiologist, but changed the direction to the COVID-19. I think this is a very good change, right? So we need to make some changes when you have a new situation. And then I'd like to, do I have time?
You have 25 minutes.
I have 25 minutes, okay. So I'm going to go faster, okay? And if you
30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. If I'm going to go faster, if you are, slides is going to be here. So if you missed some point I have. So second thing is why I want to talk about NCDs, the chronic disease. NCD is a major problem. If you look at the deaths, the overall deaths, 57 million deaths in the whole world. However, over 70% of deaths are because of NCDs. That means 3 people died, 2 of them died of other heart disease, cancer, diabetes, COPD, or mental health issues, right? So that's something we could not ignore, right? So this NCD is a quite important topic. And so we think that how the COVID-19 affect the NCDs, how the NCDs affect COVID-19, right? So what are those NCDs here? The cardiovascular disease number 1, cancer number 2, chronic lung disease, COPD, so number 3, then diabetes number 4, and mental health conditions number 5. So those 5 conditions is about 60% of the overall deaths and 8% of the all NCDs. That indicates if we controlling for those 5 conditions, the most of NCDs can be controlled, right? So we have to be focused approach, right? To work on these different diseases. And so this is easier to see what are important, why NCDs are important, right? And here is the risk factors. We have a lot of risk factors for death, including smoking, the high blood pressure, blood sugar, air pollution is important, obesity, and other things. So obesity, I had a good discussion with Saxon Jr. this morning. Obesity can cause anything, right? Obesity is related to hypertension, related to heart disease, related to stroke, related to 13 different types of cancers. That's amazing, so much, right? Obesity may not relate to chronic lung disease. However, the people with COPD who are also obese has difficulties because you don't have much capacity of your lung, right? And then you can look at the obesity is closely related to diabetes, right? And mental health issues also is related. So obesity is quite an interesting thing to study. And also the risk factors for those 5 conditions. Basically, you can look at the number 1 is Dr. Grant's favorite diet, right? So in order to prevent the chronic disease, including cancer, including heart disease, the dietary factor is most important. So we have a good tradition here. We should continue for this good tradition on the dietary factors and the NCDs, right? And the tobacco use, that's a uniform problem, and air pollution, and also the harmful use of alcohol. Because a lot of people are drinking, if over drinking would be bad. If we drink a little bit, maybe good for your heart, but not good for cancer. That's difficult. So people have to make an informed choice. And when I teaching alcohol and cancer, I gave a lecture to undergraduate student. I said, this is your choice. How would you die? You want to die of heart disease, right? You don't drink because if you drink, they protect your heart and you don't have a heart attack with low risk of heart attack. And if you drink, then if you drink, you die of cancer, right? Oral cancer, laryngeal cancer, and half of your face being cut. I think it's your decision. Because undergrads, they drink, right? First year, second year, they have parties, try to scare them. And so the drinking is interesting, and also physical activity. But should have more physical activity. Sometimes I think that's why, like California, you can go outside anytime. right? So here, I think, winter time is a little bit difficult when you have snow, it's not easy. But always, you can always go to gym and to do something for your own. Okay, so I'm going to go fast. So it's going to be good. When should I? Yeah.
So we went to
Ah.
probably one.
What? Okay. Sorry, over thought. Okay, so impact of COVID-19 on NCD risk factors. So here is a summary of the NCD risk factors. What kind of impact would be? Yes, smoking has significantly related to severe COVID-19 outcomes if you're a smoker. And I don't believe the Chinese, the media try to tell people smoking is protective of COVID-19. That's wrong, right? So this was identified, being published. And air pollution is definitely increase the incidence, increase mortality. So that's now this is our group. And alcohol consumption is also not good for the COVID-19. Physical activity is very good, right? If you this is only not the physical activity. Through the physical activity, you reduce your body weight. So before pandemic, I was almost obese, but during the pandemic, I tried to do 1 hour per day to do physical activity. Why? Because I don't want to die. So I lost 27 pounds. So that's why sometimes I also have a few good friends at my age. They all doing the same during the pandemic. That's an issue. You have a physical activity which is better for mental health also. If you have negative, sometimes you have negative energy after you kind of go outside to have a walk or do some swimming and feel much better, right? And also nutrition, the nutrition is number one, right? And right now, start to have a lot of studies on nutritional factors on COVID-19. And people emphasize to have a high protein diet, which can increase your immune function and maybe you're resistant to COVID-19. So a lot of studies right now started, and people found that high diet quality reduced are related to lower risk of COVID-19. So, and also, what would be the impact of the NCDs on the COVID-19? People have COVID-19. If they have NCDs, the chance of severe disease and death quite high, which including, I think, diabetes. If the people have diabetes, they have hypertension, right? Cardiovascular disease. And so you can see that this is a result published. If they have cardiovascular disease, there are 3 times higher chance of the severe severe disease. If they have diabetes, the two times, the hypertension about 1.5 times. If they're smokers, their chance of getting the severe disease are quite high. And I'm not going to go over disease by disease because so many different diseases. And I'm not, but I'd like to emphasize something which is NCDs has high risk of COVID-19 severe disease. ICU, and also mortality. So that's really have to pay attention. Well, if we want to prevent COVID-19, we have to have people protected, people with those chronic disease, right? And people at a certain age, over 65 years old. Most of them, a lot of them has NCDs, right? So this is the population we need to protect. And also the COVID-19 virus, there's an entrance for COVID-19 virus, which is called ACE2 receptor, right? This ACE2 receptor is not only on lung, but they can be on any organ. They can attack the brain, heart, liver, kidney, and so that is the indication. People had COVID-19 if they get recovered, especially people, all vaccinated people get COVID-19. There's high chance they have a long COVID-19 and they have a lot of other symptoms. That is something we have to be careful. So what is the long-term impact of COVID-19? So my feeling is that it's going to create a new chronic disease called the long COVID, right? Because long COVID is a group of disease related to COVID, which could be heart disease, CVDs, cancer, diabetes, COPD, I'm not sure, COPD maybe, also if they affect lung, and mental health issues. The people getting the COVID-19, they get get foggy when they could not be focused, right? So that is something we have to pay attention to. Good thing is that we did not have a long winter time of observation. This long COVID need to have much longer time, 15 years, 10 years, right? But right now we only have 1 or 2 years of observation. We're really not sure yet, but this may happen. So it's great to skip this. So here is a review. Just want to, this paper is a review paper recently published about the long COVID-19. They put over 60 symptoms after they recovered from COVID-19. And the estimate is about 80% of people have at least one symptoms. So the first 5 most common symptoms is fatigue, headache, attention disorder, hear loss, and and the difficulties of the breath, long coughing and other things. And here is the total over 60 the potential symptoms after you recover, after people recover from that. So my guess, most likely for the people who completed vaccine, they probably has much less of the symptoms. But my feeling is that people unvaccinated, they might have much trouble than that. And also we have to think about other diseases, the lung disease, cardiovascular disease, the mental disease and other diseases. So I think a few days ago, there was a paper and published. They follow up people with COVID-19 for 12 months. They found that people without diabetes, after they had diabetes, after they have COVID-19, they have died by diabetes. That's what we call the follow-up study. Before you don't have this disease, right? After COVID-19 diagnosis, then you develop the diabetes, right? So that is something we need to pay attention to, just like what I said. Also, my guess is lung cancer may be related because earlier time they attack your lung and cause inflammation and may cause the cancer. So this is a newly published paper on the instant diabetes in non-COVID. I think the impact on the future prevention and control, I think that a lot of impact of COVID-19, for example, the screening being stopped during this period. So we, right now for cancer, you see a lot of people actually get advanced cancer. So treatment stopped for a period of time. And more people may die of incidence, right? And also reduce, the physician visit, reduce the dentist visit, which can cause a lot of problems, or hygiene problem, and whatever problem you have. also people change their behaviors during the COVID. Some people start to use drugs, people start to smoke, right? People drink a lot. So that actually changed people's behavior. People, when they are totally isolated at home, this is really, really terrible. So this actually has something to change. And for the future, I think that we have to pay attention, especially at this point, trying to start to put the cohort, the COVID related cohort, to follow up this group for longer time to see what kind of impact it will have on the chronic disease. So most likely it's chronic disease, and to set up a different cohort. For example, people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated, you have a cohort including those two groups, then you can see if their long-term disease, right, are going to increase or decrease, and you can see what kind of. So basically, those are something we need to be studied. I think this is my and also change of risk factors have been mentioned. And so this is my last slide about about the prevention. For example, the chronic conditions. All of those are related to COVID-19, and also the risk factors. I think all of them are related to COVID-19. And prevention and control of COVID-19 related NCDs, we should use the same strategies as we do for the chronic disease prevention and control. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have a lot of time for questions, and Janelle is going to help carry a microphone around so people on Zoom can hear you. There's some here.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for this personal presentation. I would like to first say one thing about risk factors, which you alluded to in the beginning. We are afraid to die, maybe, but we have to remember, and this is the fact, that life is a fatal process. We are going to die. The issue is only when and how. And that's basically some of what you presented, is how. One thing that is important to realize, and this also relates to your slide here, and thank you for giving it, is the trend. One of these 5 risk factors for COVID, and actually for many other diseases, are correct, but there is one important one that is missing here, which is stress. Because stress actually can cause many of the aspects. Stress is caused by COVID, but also increase the vulnerability to COVID and to any of these non-communicable disorders that you presented here. One of the possibilities that stress might improve it, or this COVID, is actually decrease in immunity or increase in factors that are inflammatory factors, which also might cause many symptoms across many organs. But basically, the bottom line, we are dealing with a very multifactorial field that COVID is only one of them, and COVID is really an opportunity to look at this very comprehensive multifactorial aspect.
Thank you very much for your comments. I think stress is important to study. In fact, stress is included here as a mental health conditions. So that's the 5 major conditions here. The Professor Lina Moore is studying the stress, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So basically, in a large population and found a lot of interesting stuff. The stress is important because this is very common in the population, and it's a lot of times it's bad thing, sometimes a good thing. Because a little bit of stress may be good in terms of the immune functions. And over stress is bad. So that's something. Yeah. So stress is very important. Thank you very much.
Dr. Zhang, thank you very much for this very nice presentation and really fruitful thought for this. I learned it quite a lot, and especially the risk factors you mentioned about related to COVID. So, because I'm doing a fusion study at the very beginning when Wuhan had this delayed and not safety lockdown. So my colleague and I had some very preliminary analysis. We found that fusion actually reduced quite a lot, and it actually benefited to human health, especially for non-communicable disease. And by looking at the 5 risk factors, I believe that many of them, so people's behavior has been changed, and people get more sanitized and other things. So I appreciate to hear your suggestion. For example, I know that COVID is tragic, many people die. But on the other hand, because it changes people's behavior, makes people alert about hygiene, this kind of thing, potentially improve their health on the other hand. So overall, the objective, how do you think that the story of this pandemic in terms of health? Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, it's not all bad, just like what a comment. I think, yes, of course. The air pollution, if you look at air pollution, when any city locked down, the air becomes much better. The Wuhan is a very polluted city. But during the lockdown, people can see the blue skies, and it's a beautiful blue sky. So this actually is a good thing because of the lockdown. But people would not enjoy being locked inside their apartments and couldn't see much of blue sky and get a much higher stress. That would be really an issue. So yes, a lot of Christians, just like what the example was, a lot of people tend to better behave and to eat much healthier and to have physical activity, to stop smoking. Maybe, I don't know, did anyone stop smoking or smoking change patterns?
Much better.
I think much better, so people stop. And so yes, good things or bad things. But in any case, the chronic conditions, the COVID-19 related, need to be studied. And this is going to be in the future a few years, and people are going to be focused on. That's my personal view. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Zhang. Thank you. Very informative. I actually, fortunately, read your commentary comments related to Shanghai lockdown. And after you post your comments, there's a quite hot debate in many different fields. And so I guess there's quite many comments from the audience, right, readers, and they posted a lot of questions. And there's several questions actually. I struggled personally to answer. So one question is that, as we know that in the past 1 year, and even though COVID has been, we call it pandemic, right? And also there's a quite high mortality caused by the COVID. But in China, in the past years, really there's no one case that's caused by the COVID. And I saw many of your suggestions that is similar as current Hong Kong put into the action because of we know that in the past 1 or 2 months, about 3 months, Hong Kong is another city. We know that there are many people living there. It has a high incidence and high mortality. So one reader posed a comment, asked, and if we follow some strategies, take same action as Hong Kong, and are we accept that daily deaths in Shanghai will reach to 500 to 2,000, and is that acceptable in terms of our professional viewpoint, because of we are public health practitioner and epidemiologists. So that's one question. I feel very struggle to answer that question. A second question is that indeed just days ago, Hong Kong University just updated the protection from the different type of vaccine, and it really compared one vaccine from China that mainly used by Chinese, and another is Pfizer. They showed that after booster shot, 3 shot, and both vaccine provided protection up to 98% for the mortality. So both reach very high levels. And in your suggestion, you recommend Shanghai residents start to replace the shot. Basically, recommend the Pfizer vaccine. So because of Pfizer vaccine in China has not been approved yet, that's my understanding, and also very much higher cost in terms of compared to the vaccine produced by China's company. So what's your logic behind to recommend the Pfizer vaccine in terms of China vaccine? I just asked these 2 questions.
Two questions. My recommendation being read by almost 1 million people now. So they give too many comments. I'm trying to read all of their comments. Okay, so one comment is that you are from the failure country. US is a failure example of COVID-19. Why you come here to advise us? So go back to your home, don't do anything, it's not your business. That's the most of the comments I got, but I don't care, right? Because I think as epidemiologists, we stand up. It's not, we just gave the principles, right? So that's the comments I get. Second comments I got was your drug dealer. You're trying to steal your drugs and trying to get money from Chinese. And I actually made a statement of conflict of interest. I said, first, when I write this recommendation, I did not receive any funding. I did it on not in my working time either. I did not do it. My university did not, I did not use my working time. I did it overnight. I did it during the weekend. That's it. And third, I said, I suggest this good medication is based on 3 reasons. One, have large, strong clinical phase 3 trials, the best, as I know, including the Pfizer, Moderna, as well as the oral medicine of the Pfizer. They all have the large samples, phase 3 trials, and with a strong evidence they can be used. Okay, for 3 things. Then the third point I made was I have 0 investment on any pharmaceutical or drug companies. So I had to make this because they thought I tried to steal the drug. So in order to answer your question about, are you going to see people, how 500, 1,000 people die every day in Shanghai? Is that your your recommendation ethical. In fact, if you read my recommendations carefully, I said clearly, the first step is to protect your aging high-risk population. Because this is the population need to be protected. Okay, if people die, they die of, chronic disease, right? So I said, so how do we protect, right? Yes, I also mentioned Hong Kong's clinical trial. In fact, in my recommendation, Hong Kong trial, I have tabled it. If you missed the paper, I suggested right now what is available is from China, is China's vaccine with a booster. You can protection for the death is over 95%. This is in my recommendation. Probably missed. However, this Chinese medicine, when they did the phase 3 trials, they did not include anybody over 65 years old. They did not include anybody younger than 18 years old. They did not include anybody with chronic conditions. And the phase 3 trials, the problem here is that when they try to use that in the Chinese population, they have to list a lot of diseases which could not use for this vaccine. Why? Because they are not sure. This may cause a death, right? Because if you did not include that in your phase 3 trials, you cannot easily apply it to other populations, right? So the reason I suggest the Pfizer is that the Pfizer actually including aging people, Pfizer including younger people, Pfizer including people with chronic conditions, right? So the first step is to get people protected. And if you are confident, I'm not that confident on Chinese vaccine until I see the Hong Kong's data. And right now, the data from Yale, in fact, they found that with the 3 Chinese vaccine, the injection, the antibody did not increase. I started to worry about my recommendations. I started to worry about this. Why? Because people may take my advice to get to the booster and to then may not get the protection. Then people die after vaccination. The Chinese never report. In China, the vaccination never related to any deaths, never related to any chronic disease, never related to anything. People die of COVID, they don't classify that as COVID. They could be long, hard, feeling. So classification issue. Because in the United States, because of insurance issue, anybody with COVID-19 positive, no matter you died of heart disease, diabetes, whatever, you all called COVID-19 deaths. That's why we have so many people die, right? But in fact, the China, they don't. You only have to die of COVID-19 pneumonia. That's a COVID-19 death. All the rest is not. So that's the issue. So in terms of, do I want to see 500 people die, 1,000 people die every day? No, I don't want. But I want they start to protect the people there, especially high-risk population. That's my answer, the first answer. Second answer, I already gave you second answer, which is about Chinese vaccine. I start to be very suspicious about this Chinese vaccine. And right now, I start reading more about evidence. And, so is a data issue? I'm not sure, really. Not sure, because this never been my belief. The Chinese vaccine will be effective. And data didn't support. But we don't see data. It's hard thing is you don't see data. If you don't see data, you don't know, right? That's it. Did I answer your question or not?
Yeah. So many questions not from myself. I just a few.
No, those are
questions. Yeah.
already. I think over, and it's a problem. I don't want to see people die, but COVID really die. People die, and
I don't even like, but I got it real quick. you have any opinion of giving your background about the origins of COVID-19?
My understanding, Chinese people will never believe that. This is almost always this from China, from Wuhan, generated from there. Okay. The Chinese government trying to throw back to the United States. I don't know how was this kind of information. And if this is from the United States, if this is the biological war, why United States get this biological weapon against ourselves? This is the logic, right? There's no logic here. China don't have many people die. Most of the people are us. So we generate something to destroy our population? No, not at all. It's not the logic at all. But they trying to lie to the people, trying to generate this kind of things. And this is totally unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is, but you cannot open, I have a lot of good friends. Most of them are deans of the school public health or directors of the CDC, right? Not all good friends. At the very beginning, they all believed in me. But of course, in the end, only a small portion, less than 5% of them say, Dr. Zhang, in private, I agree with you, but the majority doesn't believe in it. So they're not general people. They're deans of the school public health. They're directors of the CDC. So the brand wash really has some impact because the information being protected. People don't have information from outside. And including students here, most of them reading Chinese media, not actually open up. So I advise my students, read English literature. Do not, read only thing on WeChat. The WeChat is a popular media in Chinese, or so this is important to really know what happens around you in the whole world. But in China, you couldn't. My daughter, I brought my daughter to two places in one trip. One is Bangladesh, the poorest country in the whole world. Another is China. So I asked her, I said, what do you feel? So which country you like most? The Bangladesh. You know why? She can have a free access of the internet without any restriction. In China, she could not do anything there. So I'm not against China. I do not against China. I do not against China. I myself is Chinese, right? I come from there. I try to help them. But this is, if people lie, you have to stand up. You're lying. They're lying to us. Good question. This really.
You have to say that.
And also, this question could not be raised when you're in China.
I must say something in support of
Sorry,
China.
there's another question in the back.
If you remember, there was a SARS epidemic in China some time ago. I happened to have a clinical trial in Beijing during this time, and I was very angry because the Chinese government confiscated my research group and transferred them to treat patients. However, there are two things. First of all, the lockout during the SARS epidemic in China was very efficient. And actually, they got hold of the SARS efforts there very shortly because it was effective and they were able to impose it. Secondly, according to what you commented about information, it depends how you get it. I'm not Chinese, even though I spent many times in China.
Yeah.
But actually, I had very good information on the SARS statistics. Why? Because I had a good friend there, Shen Yukun, who was the director of the Institute of Mental Health in Beijing.
Yeah.
And she had very good contacts. She showed me, and we met many times, she showed me the numbers of the SARS because I was very angry. And they had very good information about what was happening. They didn't publish it in the media.
Inside, it does have information about how many patients they have. This is the internal communication. But the data is national secret, so not published. And during this pandemic, I was very much afraid. I have so many friends there. I never want to talk with them regarding any data, because if I do that, they are going to be accused, kind of, to release the secret information to them. So that is, and also it's a protection tool. So anything in my recommendation, the data was based on the data from outside of China. From inside of China, it's hard to get. Very hard.
Inside, it's very easy.
Yes.
Thank you. I really appreciate.
Can you turn the microphone on? Thank you, sir. Oh, gee. There you go. That's it.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Is it on? Is this better?
There you go.
Thank you very much. One of the things I appreciated in your excellent presentation was the use of some of the data that were available, both for your own projections, which were very clever, as well as to give us a sense of what our current evidence base is. And if I might, you made me think about two important parts from an epidemiological standpoint: etiology and prognosis. So as I'm thinking about that, looking at some of the data you used, I'm also thinking about two of the major challenges I think we still have, and which makes me a little bit on the skeptical side for how we might interpret the data. And it's this: on the etiological side, the fundamental measure is going to be incidence in the population, and we have an upshot to that where we have a pretty good ability to define the case. Right? So we know a true case when it occurs. The problem is we can't count the population. Those incident rates are probably grossly underestimated, which means the etiological factors we're basing or believe we're identifying based on those incident differences or rate differences may in fact be obscured and leading us down incorrect pathways or missing something important. On the other side of the coin, I think we have the opposite problem. When we look at prognosis, and you kind of alluded to this, we can count deaths. Dead is dead. The problem is classifying. And you even said yourself that we have a challenge to really know when you're looking at case fatality in particular, is it truly a COVID death, or should we be counting it as a COVID death or not? So my question to you is, how are we going to overcome these two important measurement problems to advance the epidemiology and form either preventive or control measures? Thank you.
This is a great question. Just like I mentioned in my last, when I stated in my last slide, we need to have 10 or 15 years to study this COVID-19 related chronic disease. So we need to have a much better study design. Whatever we're doing here, very cross-section, because we really don't know what's the long term. Those are with a short period of time, 10 months, 12 months, 24 months. I think right now, most of studies are within a year, right? So really, we did not see any long-term effect. The second thing is that we don't really, it's hard to separate what is the risk factor, what is the endpoint, because they're cross-section, right? But when you have a follow-up study, you'd be able to follow up this group and to have a very good study design to actually get to your conclusion. I think this is just a beginning. And those data I don't think this would be like what we did on air pollution, whatever. But those need to be further confirmed by prospective studies, right? Those are not prospective studies, they're cross-section. So it's a very big challenge, and we need to design better study to really approach this process. This is very, very good. Very good. Thank you. I like this question, which actually I did not see on my slides. I'm trying to help you to make this statement.
We still have time?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, okay. So it was a great talk. As always, you made us think and, you know, things that we thought we knew, now we understand better. Thank you so much for the comments, terrific. So I found it interesting, your discussion about, you know, understanding long COVID and what kind of effects it has on chronic disease. Has anybody been looking at that at all in terms of the specific variants? Because clearly the variants have different impact, and you certainly would expect that they would have also different long COVID. And, you know, it's hard because how can you talk about Omicron and long COVID when it's only been in the last 5 minutes? But still, it seems interesting.
You know, Jude, so my first question to you is my presentation better than my PhD defense? She remembers my PhD defense. That time I couldn't speak English. What did I do?
He read the slides. He put every word of his talk on the slides. And he read them, and it was brilliant, because then everybody could understand. Brilliant. He did a great job. And now, this is like an amazing talk where you have no notes and you're just extemporating. It's really impressive.
Just let you know, people kind of grew up, right? So in order to answer your question, that's a very good question. That's why when we study vaccine, we separate them into different periods. Delta, Omicron. And when I talk about this long COVID, in fact, those are data from Delta, not from Omicron. My belief, Omicron would not do much because they don't affect the long, right? So this is a good question. Also, need time to study because right now we don't have data really on Omicron. So vaccine, fortunately, we get the data on the Omicron vaccine effect, but still very short data, and we only found the vaccine protective for deaths. So this is a good question, and in fact, people actually need to study different variants, and because their biology is different, their impact are different, and especially, if we don't do the nutrition, maybe nutritional factor has a different impact on that.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.